Hi, Erica McClain here again. Today we're going to talk about what to expect as the seller is going to take place during the buyer's home inspection. I said we briefly talked about that when we talked about what happens when your property goes under contract. This is now the home inspection phase. Buyer pays for it. The home inspection can take anywhere from an hour to I've seen them last 5 to 6 hours. That's kind of rare. Typically, it's around 2 to 3 hours, depending on the home inspector. They have to be a licensed home inspector in order to do that. Most sellers ask if they should be home or not when the home inspection is happening. My preference is you're better off not to be there. If you do prefer to stay, you can. I would recommend, though, not to follow the home inspector around, not to answer any questions. Um, the home inspector might say something that you hear is wrong, so then you jump in and say something that's usually not a good scenario. We're better off to kind of just give them their space, let them do their stuff. The home inspector is going to run every appliance. They're going to take if you have a gas forced air furnace, they're going to take the cover off the furnace. They're going to look at everything inside there. They're going to take the full cover off of your electrical panel. They're going to turn the heat on. Weather permitting, they will turn the AC on. They can only do that if it's above a certain temperature. They will go into a crawl space if you have one. They will go up into the attic. Now, if you have an attic that is just beams, typically what they'll do is just climb up a ladder, go through the hole, and make their observations and take pictures and everything from there. They will pretty much go through everything, the garage, the foundation, the basement, all the mechanicals. They'll probably run all the water in your house at the same time. And then of course they put in their report a water pressure wasn't so great. Well, at what point do you have every faucet, whether it's the sink, the shower, and everything running in your house at the same time? Kind of rare. Typically, then what happens is they will give the report to the buyers. Sometimes they're very organized and they have a digital and they send it to them right away. It's a waiting game now on the seller side. So we're sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Best case scenario, they come back and don't ask for anything. Worst case scenario, the home inspector kind of scares the heck out of them and they decide to cancel the contract. Typically, what happens is they'll come back with an attorney letter uh, asking for a list of items to be prepared. And of course, they always put in, by a licensed professional, or they'll put a dollar amount that they want credit wise in lieu of those repairs. Now, this is all negotiable. Even if you had the house sold as is, and the as is rider is signed, they still have a right to do a home inspection and cancel as a result of it or ask for repairs. Um, Typically, I recommend to the sellers, instead of fixing something, if it's something legitimate, we're better off to just give them a credit for it. This way, we wash our hands of it. If they have an issue with how it was done or something wasn't fixed properly, that doesn't come back on the seller. It's here's your credit, hire whoever you want, and you deal with it. Unless it's something Like, so occasionally they'll find a small gas leak in the basement. I mean, they use these detectors, and with this small gas leak probably wouldn't amount to anything for 50 years. Well, you as the homeowner, knowing you have a small gas leak in your house, that's something that you want to get fixed right away, because you never know what could happen. Um, and when it's something legitimate to give a credit for. Uh, I had a seller once that said after all the negotiations, they can do their home inspection, but tell them don't ask for anything. The deal's going to be over with. I'm not fixing anything. I'm not doing anything. Well, they had not been up in the attic. It was a colonial style home, so no ladder or anything. They didn't use the attic for storage or anything. Well, the home inspector discovered they had pigeons living in the attic. They didn't know that. The seller did have to get that remedied and fixed, so it wasn't an issue. Um, but when they come back and try and renegotiate, I had again a seller once that the buyer came back asking for like a $15,000 credit because the home inspector told her it needed a new furnace. In this house, they had, I don't even know if you're familiar with them, these old, they called them the octopus furnace. This huge thing in it. I guess that's why they called it an octopus. It had all these things coming off of it. There was rust all over it and everything else. Okay, that was already factored into the price when we did the negotiating. You didn't need a home inspector to tell you that this house needs a new furnace. If you didn't realize that on your own, or your buyer's agent didn't point that out to you, I'm sorry. Things like that we say no to. And like I said, we're always better off um, to offer a credit, because this way, then we're done with it, unless it's something, like I said, like a gas leak or something that's a safety issue. We usually don't get a copy of the home inspection report unless we ask for it. Um, we're usually better off not to ask for it, because if for some reason this deal falls through, we've now received a copy of this home inspection report. So if there's something in there that we weren't aware of, now, if the deal falls through and the property goes back on the market, we now have to disclose it. So we're better off kind of not knowing. So usually we don't ask for it. Their attorney will just list the items that were of concern to them. I recently had a seller that insisted on a copy of the home inspection report. He wanted it, so we had to ask for it. The buyer was asking for a $7,000 credit for repairs. He read through this home inspection report. All it did was infuriate him. He would have been better off never looking at it. We negotiated a $2,000 price reduction instead of the $7,000 that they were asking for, and the deal's going through. We're closing in a few weeks. But him asking for that and having that report, all it did was get him upset, because he's like, oh, this inspector, he's nitpicking every little thing. I said, well, you have to realize this is what the inspector is getting paid for. They're getting paid to find every little nook and cranny, anything that could potentially be wrong with the property. Really, a good home inspector is going to check that there's nothing major wrong with the house that would make the sellers like not want to buy it, like it's going to fall down in a year or something like that. But a good home inspector also, even if they're not first time buyers, but for this particular house, will tell them like different maintenance things that need to be done, what time of year they should be done, how often they should be done. The one home inspector that I've worked with for years, he's actually the only one that I'm comfortable referring out. I never used to refer out a home inspector for fear that somebody would think, oh, if the inspector missed something, oh, the realtor told him not to put that on there. But this guy that I've been working with for a while, he's really good. He shows everybody, the buyer, here's your main shutoff for the water. Then he always tells them the story that if you're going to be on vacation, gone for a week or whatever, shut the main water off to the house, because he knew somebody that had a pipe leak. They were on vacation and the water just kept flooding and flooding and flooding the house the whole time they were gone, creating a lot of damage. So a good home inspector is going to tell them like about, how often to change the furnace filter and stuff like that. But they're always going to find something. In my opinion, they're always going to ask for something, even if by giving them some kind of credit back. I think they kind of feel justified then in doing the home inspection. It makes them happy that on the seller side, we're willing to give a little. I mean, most of the time they should know this is not a new construction home they're buying. So yes, they are going to find stuff that's outdated or not up to current code. Um, this is what can kind of drag things on. If we're waiting for the two attorneys to go back and forth through communications about this is where I usually get involved with the buyer's agent after talking to the seller, get back to the buyer's agent and say, this is what the seller's, willing to do. The buyer's agent will talk to the buyer's agent, so that then we can just call the attorneys and say, this is what both parties have agreed upon. So they can write the letter, sign off on it, and we can get the attorney review period closed, because then the next step is the appraisal. Like I said before, the appraisal typically does not get done until after attorney review is closed. And that's what always throws off all these dates where they're asking for a mortgage contingency extension because, the appraisal's not back. But we'll talk more about that in another episode, about what to expect at the appraisal. So I hope you found this information to be useful. Maybe learned a few things that you didn't know. If you did, hit the like bell, subscribe. I would appreciate it. And I hope to see you in my next episode. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye bye.